Hello, and welcome to We Will Manage, the podcast exploring the weird and wonderful world of work. We are two young professionals figuring out our careers, one conversation at a time.
Today, we're talking about workplace dynamics. So stick around to hear if work really can be measured in hours, how most meetings are a waste of time, and how office drama isn't everyone's cup of tea. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
I was just thinking, being that at the beginning of our last episode that we're actually recording today, I showed the massive difference in our prep that I shared a screen. So maybe we could add that in here because it kind of explains, in a way. I take full responsibility for this. Why we've decided to re-record this episode.
It's okay. We're new to this.
Yeah.
We're learning as we go. It's fine.
I did an experiment as a scientist. Conclusion is
we need to re-record. Well, no. I think the episode that we did was good, but we realized it might have been a bit biased. Is that the right word?
Yeah. Actually, you know what? When I was re-prepping or prepping, I realized that I think we did actually do a pretty good job at giving both sides of the story. Like when I was going through the points that I do want to mention, I think most of them we did touch on, but also from a bit of a strong, we only really gave one perspective because we both have very similar opinions on this kind of thing.
Yeah.
So to give a bit of context, today's episode is about workplace dynamics. Which is basically all of the rules and setup and kind of restrictions that are put into place so that an organization, whatever kind of company it may be, can work and can function to its best capacity and be as efficient as possible. So that's anything that like timetables, working in office, working remote, all of these structures, types of meetings, that kind of thing. So although we both work very different situations, we have quite similar opinions on these subjects. So we're going to change it up a bit, but I'm just going to get
excited
my prep out.
See how we've restructured. We don't just fall into the same pattern as we did last time.
So we kind of jumped into this pretty quick.
We did.
First of all, how has your day been? Have you had a nice day?
My day's been good, yeah. Today was a bit more chilled. Last week and the first week of each month are always the most intense. So this week you started off a lot more chill. And the photo session outside of the office yesterday. And then today I was just a lot of editing and just answering emails and doing bits and bobs that as I was out all day yesterday, I didn't really get to. So chilled. How about you?
It was a bit of a roller coaster of a day. I had a very great morning. It was one of those mornings when I was like, I love my job.
Yeah.
I love this. I'm having a great time. And then I had lunch and then I was like, I'm done. I'm over with work today. I'm finished. No, it was
the love has run out.
Yeah, it was. I had a lunch meeting, so maybe the fact of not having taken a break in the middle of the day was a bit overwhelming. Yeah. And it was a bit of a strategic kind of talking about the future meeting, and some frustrating hurdles were discussed. And I think I was a bit tired after that. Also, I'm on my allergy medicine because it's hay fever season, and it makes me very sleepy. So that doesn't help.
On the other hand, you were a supermodel the other day.
I was a supermodel yesterday morning.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Oh, was that yesterday? Oh, yeah, it was yesterday. It was for the same day, yeah.
It's only Tuesday. Yeah, that was quite fun. I really enjoyed that. So I was modeling for some photos to use for our marketing for our sustainable tote bag brand. Tree Tote, check it out. And I've just realized that I haven't set up my studio lighting because it's so bright outside. It's daytime.
It is. Still. It's so bright. It's the first time, kind of giving away how much we've prepped, but it's the first time we're recording since the time change. Yeah. So it's very nice and bright.
It's beautiful. It makes a big difference in your mood, I think, having a bit more light.
Although it just makes the mornings harder. I've definitely been waking up later because it just feels like to wake up early.
Yeah, of course.
Earlier than it when like getting light. It's strange.
Yeah, waking up at dark isn't nice.
No. No.
I haven't noticed that much of a difference for me.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
You were waking
it's
up in the
already
dark
light
already?
when I think it was maybe starting to get light before, but it wasn't. I wake up at 6.
Mm.
And I think, yeah, it's still dark, like pitch dark now when I wake up, but it's already getting light by the time I leave. Or the sun's already coming back up by the time I leave anyway. So yeah, I'm also drinking tea with no milk, which is quite a catastrophe.
Is milk on its way, or are you just doing... No. I'm doing kombucha today.
Ooh, darling. Homemade kombucha.
Homemade kombucha. Courtesy of my dad.
Cool.
So yeah,
So let's
I'm feeling ready.
Stuck in.
Yes.
Let's get stuck in. So yeah, I think a good way to start off is maybe just give each of us our current situation. So what's your workplace dynamics in the way that you work currently? So you, up until very recently, were working on your own. So you were self-employed on your own, having to figure out your own timetables up to a certain extent. Recently, how long ago now?
It was in September, so it's been 6 months, 7 months.
Wow, half a year. Yeah. So half a year ago, you got your first employee.
Yeah.
And you're having to be a bit of a manager now, and having to establish certain, not necessarily rules, but dynamics of what timetables you work on, and whether you work totally remote, if you have a shared space that you work together. Yeah. If you could give us a little insight into that.
So currently, hopefully at some point this will change, but currently me and my employee work in our own spaces, in our own homes. I have a room that I can dedicate to just being my office, which is very nice. I'm very lucky. And yeah, she works from home as well. In regards to schedule, we very much revolve around our clients. They all have their own schedules when it comes to the social media side of things. For example, yesterday I was out getting content for a client. So that's whenever they can fit us in, that's when it happens, and things like that. So I think we do generally work Monday through Friday, but we will sometimes work weekends as well. So we do sometimes take days off in the middle of the week. Each client has a certain day that their stuff goes up and has to be ready for and all that. So it's kind of dependent on them rather than us setting our own schedules. And with the branding clients, I can be a lot more, I decide when I'm going to
flexible.
Do that. And then meetings and stuff with them is normally, again, it depends on the client, but very often the meetings do have to be later on in the evening or weekends, because very often it's someone's second business that they're trying to set up. So it's when they're not working their regular job. So again, it's all kind of mixed up, but yeah, it kind of is a bit.
And is there any way that you ensure that certain hours are being worked? So either that be people working enough or maybe working too much. Is there anything in place, or is it basically task oriented?
It's all task oriented. Yeah. There are certain, with social media, the goals and tasks are a lot more clear. We sign a contract with the client that says that these things are going to get done on a weekly basis, leading to a whatever number of monthly total, of that be content creation, number of posts, whatever. It's done weekly and then summed up monthly. So it's very clear of, did this get done or not? Did this not get done? With branding clients, it is a little bit more subjective. But then in the branding process, there are kind of little milestones that we go hitting, and we normally have a time scale that we give the clients. So it's more just, has this gotten done, rather than have you worked 9 till 2 or 9 till 5 or whatever.
A certain amount of hours. Yeah. Super interesting. Cool.
Yeah.
And in terms of timetable, you basically, there's no strict timetable. Things get done when they need to get done. And I guess maybe availability. Do you need to be available for your clients?
I guess that's something that definitely is a bit more, we have to be a bit more on it with availability. I think that's the only thing really, like if someone sends an email or a message or whatever in like traditional working hours, we try and answer, even if it is more of a day off. And then it depends on the clients, because we get to know them and when they, and they get to know us as well. But normally in a traditional kind of 9 to 5 or 9 to 7 even is when we try and make sure that we're on it answering clients. I like to kind of start work around 7:30, 8 and go until about 4. But that isn't really how it pans out. Like yesterday I had to be at the photo session for 12, which meant I had to get a train at 5 to 11, which meant I had to leave here, my house, at around 10:15. So I did get something done before leaving, but it was all kind of like prep and stuff for the session. And then by the time I finished that around 3 o'clock, I had lunch and was dead. So it's kind of depends on what's happening, but I try and have a bit of a schedule. And I know that Claudia does as well, my employee. She also likes to, as it's a time when clients are always asking us things anyway, and we're talking with them anyway, she is more kind of between 9 and 7 kind of is when she does more stuff, with the break obviously at lunchtime. But yeah, it's kind of all over the place. Like we then also have clients that will speak to us on a Sunday, and we know that that's their only free day, so you have to answer on a Sunday, and it's a bit
okay, interesting.
Yeah,
I mean we'll go into the pros and cons in a minute, but thank you for the input.
yeah.
So yeah, on my side, it's very kind of traditional. So I don't work 9 to 5, I work 8 to 5.
Illegal.
And I mean, it's not too strict. If I need a bit of flexibility, if I need to be somewhere or I need to leave a little bit earlier or things like that. So on certain days I leave kind of a quarter hour early because I need to go and catch a bus to go somewhere anyway. So it's not too strict, but I do stick to the timetable.
As a
and
general
if I don't,
rule.
I need to, I mean, I don't, I let people know or ask permission, whichever one of the two is more appropriate for the situation. So yeah, I work a pretty standard, strict per se timetable. And then in terms of remote
And how do you
working,
feel about that? Do you like that? Would you rather not have that?
it's
I'm sure
an
we'll get
interesting
into
question.
it.
Yeah, I think let's go into the pros and cons, but it is also interesting to see my personal perspective of how I live through that. I know that for some people it works better than for others. I personally don't dislike it. I quite like having that structure, and I think I would probably do it anyway, even if it wasn't enforced. Yeah. And also I'm lucky enough that it can be flexible if I need it to be. So if I ever I have an appointment somewhere or I need to leave earlier because I want to go and do something, it doesn't have to be like a doctor's appointment. On Thursdays, I generally leave 15 minutes earlier because I want to catch a bus to go and horse ride, As long as I get my stuff done, and maybe I get there a little bit earlier in the morning or whatever. So I don't feel constricted. I don't feel like it's too constricting. But I do like the structure. And I do work on kind of an hourly basis. I don't know how easy it would be for me to, I mean, my tasks aren't that structured in, this has to get done today. So it's a good way to know, okay, this is how much I work in a day, this amount of hours, and if I've gotten what I need to get done that day done, then that's great. And if I haven't, it's because it needs some more time, or maybe that day I was feeling less productive. Yeah, it has its... Anyway, we'll get into the pros and cons, but I feel quite fine about it. It works well for me.
Yeah.
Or at least I've gotten used to it. It's one of the two.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But, and then in terms of remote working, again, I do mostly working at the office. And then if I want to work away for some reason, I can ask permission, but it's not... I wouldn't say it's frowned upon, but it's not common practice.
I think it's fine, but if you were to abuse of it, it would be...
Yeah. I try and avoid it just because I think the thing with timetables and the remote working and everything, I like that it has this structure because I'm not expected to reply after a certain hour. So like after 5 p.m., if somebody calls me from the office, it's not expected of me to pick up. And I quite like that. I like my boundaries.
Yeah.
But yeah, in many ways could be less productive. I don't know.
Yeah.
But then sometimes if I do need to stay on because there's a meeting going on and it runs over, because there's flexibility in what I need for my personal life, I'm also more than happy to stay. So I do that all the time. So that's my situation. So I'm more of a traditional 9 to 5 in office hours, and then not really any remote working. So the idea I had for us to kind of go into the details and the pros and the cons was we're going to go kind of subject per subject. So we're going to start with timetables.
Okay.
And we're going to kind of each of us defend the two kind of extremes. So we have the traditional 9 to 5. That's what I'm going to defend, simply because that's how I've set it up and is probably the one I know more. And then you're going to defend flexible hours. So more your kind of situation.
Okay.
So I don't know how we should structure it. Maybe we should go into... So let's jump into the first topic, which is timetables. So we have the two extremes. So the more traditional 9 to 5, that's the situation that I'm going to defend. And then you're going to be all for flexible hours.
Okay.
So I don't know how. Maybe we should each kind of give a little pitch. We could kind of imagine we're in a situation where we're co-founding and we're deciding. So up until now, we've been working just you and me, and we've kind of been working in a pretty easy, non-complicated way. But now we're starting to build a team, and we want to set what our company culture is going to be and what we want these rules to be for our team. I don't know how much context we want to give, because I think it depends a lot on the type of company and the type of work we're doing. But let's try and keep it quite vague, kind of horizontal, an overview of what that could look like for most companies. Yeah. So maybe I could start by giving my little pitch on why I think we should do a traditional 9 to 5.
Yeah, go for it.
And then you can tell me what you think about that and what you think we should do, if that sounds all right.
Okay, let's do it.
So I really think that the best for our company is to set a strict timetable for our whole team. We should expect everybody to be available or in office or working, I should say, from 9 to 5 or whatever timetable we want to set. I think this is really important for our communication amongst our team. I want people to be able to talk to their team members whenever they need to. I think it makes it a lot easier for scheduling meetings, because we know when everybody's available and when everybody is online or in office. It sets really clear boundaries. So on our behalf, we know that everybody's getting the work done or getting the hours done that we expect of them and that we pay them for, and also that they're not working too much. So I really value that we're not pushing boundaries, and that also some people have a tendency to overwork, and I really want to avoid that for mental health. It's a big priority for me. And then again, even amongst the team, so availability to each other, but also to our clients. So to be available to respond to client phone calls, obviously depending on the department, or also external calls. So if we're wanting to talk to providers or whatever collaborators we have, this is the timetable that most people use. And so I think it's what's most efficient for our working. So what do you think?
As I'm a pushover, I'd be like, yeah, that sounds great. Let's do that. But I will try to a different position. So I think it would be better if we had flexible timetables where our employees would be able to, our team members would be able to choose when works best for them. Obviously, all sorts of measures need to be put in place so that somebody isn't working like 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. or something like that. Like you touched on overworking. Some people, I think everyone likes to focus on trying to get the worker to work, but I think sometimes it definitely happens. I feel like we could fall into that as well, of the worker who's overworking, and that can obviously lead to many issues, I think, for the person and for the company. So yeah, obviously that would have to be in place to make sure that people aren't overworking themselves. But I believe a more flexible timetable. Time schedule works. Yeah, time schedule would be more productive, whether it be because people have personal things on, or even just, again, this comes back a little bit to the kind of job. But I feel like for all jobs, you can have days where motivation just isn't there. Like you said today, up until 2:00 you were feeling it, and then afterwards you weren't.
Honestly, everything I did after 3 p.m. was worth nothing.
So I feel like in situations like that, somebody should be able, especially if you've had a really productive morning where you've got more done than you would another day, you should be able to say, it's 2:00, I'm taking time off, or I'm leaving, or whatever. Or if you do have an appointment or something that you want to do, if that's horse riding and that's helping your mental health, then it's horse riding. Like, who cares? And you want to do that on a Tuesday morning, why not? I feel like for this to work, we would need to have very clear and well set up communication channels, so that when there are meetings, that there's always someone on call that is there and is working. So not everybody would take the Tuesday morning off to go horse riding, for example. But that's the beauty of it being a team, that not everybody has to be on it 100% all the time. You can pick up slack. You know, if one day at the office there's 2 people, that's fine. If the next there's 10, that's great. But it's not always, you know, it's a team, so we can help each other in that way as well. And I think that way people feel like it's their choice to work when they want to work and not work when they don't want to work, whether for whatever reason, if it is personal, if it is because you've got a doctor's appointment and you have to take the day off. I know that happened to my mum. She had to take the day off for a doctor's appointment, and then that same morning they cancelled the doctor's appointment, so she'd taken a day off and it was for nothing. So then she had to, on a different day, have to do it again. And it's just, you know, it's so for whatever reason it is, I feel like if people say, okay, I'm going to organize my week how it suits me best. I'm not a morning person. I cannot work well before 12 because I just feel in a daze. Whereas I can work until 7 or 8 and I'm fine. Then you should be able to do that. And there's going to be someone else who prefers to be in at 8 and finish at 4. So it can completely be a way to kind of support everyone, so that everyone's they're working at their like maximum capacity without it being a burnout situation. Yeah. I don't know how it would work the best to make sure people aren't overworking, to make sure that people are, you know, clocking in at a certain time and clocking out before a certain time or whatever. But I think we've touched on this before. I think it was in the management episode about trust. Yeah. So that has to be, you would hope that if people say that they're working certain hours and getting things done or whatever, that's true.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting comment. I know that in the past I've actually had this kind of discussion with my current manager. And it was really interesting to have his perspective, because he had been in a situation in the past where he's had his employees lie. And obviously that has a big impact on your trust of not only that specific employee, but, you know, all future. I mean, it's like having somebody cheat on you, right?
Exactly. Literally, I was going to say, like, it's the baggage you drag into a relationship. Like, that's just... Yeah.
Exactly.
It's normal. It's normal.
Yeah. And I think also I've been in a situation where with my manager, I've been maybe given this flexibility, but then I feel how can I prove to you that I'm doing, you know, I was kind of afraid that there were going to be situations where they could maybe hold it against me. If I say I've started working at 7 a.m. and I have left at 3 or whatever time, however many hours I'm supposed to do in the day, and then have a call at 4 p.m. and then not pick up, and they be, why weren't you working? And I was like, I was there from 7. Well, how do I know that that's true?
Yeah. And we needed you at this time or whatever.
Yeah. Exactly. So I think it's harder to put in place the flexible hours. I think you need a lot more discipline, and this is a word that we were lost on the other day. Maybe we could pop that clip into.
Yeah, that and the underwhelming moment when we actually found out the word, and we were like, that's the word you couldn't get.
I think for a flexible setup to be feasible, to make sure that you do have this maximum efficiency and a collaborative workplace, you need a lot more discipline, a lot more either trust in your employees, which would be ideal, but you can also set up systems of maybe logging hours or logging tasks. if it's more task oriented, like your situation is, for example.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot harder to implement.
Yes.
But if you have that capacity and you're a good enough manager and have your ideas clear and the tasks that are clear and goals set and systems in place, like you say, collaboration tools, etc. I do think that in the long run, it's maybe...
Yeah. I feel like it also comes down to a lot the kind of work that it is. So not even like creative or not creative, it's how much independence the employees have versus how much does it need to be a team effort. So I feel like with me and my employee, we run different parts of the business. I do the more branding side, she does the more social media side, and then there are bits that we come together and collaborate. So that's when we have to do meetings between us and such. And then we also have our weekly meetings where we discuss everything. Another example where there's kind of more independence is, for example, a real estate agent's office. So there, each agent has to go out, do their viewings, and they're not in the office. They will be sometimes, but it's, you know, they're out, they're scouting, they're doing this, they're doing that. And something that my parents in their office or in other ones that I've been a part of as in my job, not as a real estate agent, they will have like every Tuesday at 10 is when we have our, you know, our group team meetings where we discuss whatever, and we're all definitely at the office at that time and nobody makes any appointments out the office. But, you know, so I think it also comes down to that. I think if it's jobs where it is much more of a team effort, then it is much more important that everyone's on at the same time to communicate, to be able to make that easier. So, yeah.
It depends, doesn't it?
It depends.
It all depends.
It all depends.
So as co-founder of this company that we're currently setting up, I think now we should talk a little bit about remote working and how we feel about that. And then after that, we can set up our rules and our dynamics for our team. So we have two options. We can either go fully remote, which is what you're going to defend, or we can do full in office. So I think afterwards, when we try to come to a conclusion on what we want to set up, we're likely to talk about hybrid models. But for the sake of the conversation, we're going to just talk about being fully remote and being fully in office. Maybe you want to tell us what you think is the best
option. Okay, so I would say fully remote.
Because that's what you've told me to say.
Yeah, because that's what I have been told to say, Your Honor. I think fully remote, one huge benefit is...
I just broke my lamp. Hang on.
My God. Yes, God. Look what happened.
Oh, he fixed it. Thank you.
I was trying to see if I could... give the markers names, but I can't seem to do that right now.
Do you have a lateral bar?
Yes, but it's got people, chat, brand, text, media, and layout. Media?
I don't have any of that.
Media. Oh my God, there's things like clapping. I pressed it, but nothing happened. We have a drum roll. We have a drum joke. We have laughing.
Brilliant.
And we could upload our own media as well. Oh my God. Oh my God. Too funny. Oh my God.
I feel like I'm friends.
So yeah, anyway, because at the bottom,
let's jump back in.
At the bottom I have I've got one that says mark next to my mic, but if I press it, is to add a marker. It's the same as pressing M. So I can't see the ones we've created. Yeah. So I'm going to do another one of like jumping back in. Okay. Clip created from marker. Oh, clip created from... Anyway. Yes. Jumping back in, remote.
So yeah, let's talk about the remote working versus full in-office situation. What do we want to implement for our team? What do you think is best?
I think remote is best because number one is the time that people don't have to spend commuting. So the time that they, it could be 5 minutes, but it could also be an hour. It could be 2 hours. So that's something that they won't be having to add to whatever time that they're already doing for us. And then number two is it doesn't limit our team. We don't have to all be living within the same city. For example, with us, we're doing this podcast completely remotely. We're not in the same even country, and it's allowing us to be able to, do something, create together. So those are my 2 strong points to remote working. I think that there are lots of other ones. I feel like tying in with flexible time schedules. It's if you do need to go out, then you can, the whole process, if you do need to take half an hour to go to an appointment that's near you, that is all going to be, you've got, your life is set up around where you live. So your pharmacy, doctor, all that is normally close to where you live. So all those kind of things will take less time. If you do need to just recharge because you just had a crappy meeting, don't know if I should have said that, because you just had a really bad meeting and you want to recharge, you want to do something, you can just, go out for a walk, make yourself a cup of tea, whatever. Being at home, I feel like gives you a chance to recharge, reset, and then jump back into it. And that's an hour you've taken out for whatever reason. Things like eating your own meals at home. It's something that you don't have to plan ahead to take food with you or spend money when you're out at your job. So those are some of my pros to remote working.
Interesting. So, I mean, I totally get what you're saying. I have some things that worry me about working fully remote. One of them being that people can't collaborate quite as spontaneously. So I think if you have to make a video call or send a message, you're less likely to maybe bring something up just spontaneously than you are if you're in an office setting. I know personally, I communicate with my office mates a lot more, be that work related or unrelated from work, when I am in the office and they're around me than if I have to send them a message. I don't really want to bother them, So that's something that would worry me about remote working, which is, I think, a pro of being in office. And so that counts for being more efficient for work, but also personally. So I want my team to really get to know each other and like each other, if that can happen. And I feel like it's hard to get to know people on a personal level if you're only communicating online. That's not necessarily the case for everybody, but I think some people are going to have more of a struggle, or they're going to struggle a bit more to get to know their colleagues if they are totally online. So I think that can avoid certain isolation, create a better company culture. So, Also, I think being on the computer, so if you're working remote all the time, you're always on your computer. Not that that's necessarily very different when you're working in office, but maybe if certain meetings can be done in real life, face to face, that can reduce digital fatigue. So people looking at a screen all day can get a bit tired. Either that's the eyeballs or anything else to do with looking at a screen, sitting down. That's things that we can maybe reduce if we're working in office. Yeah, I think there are my main kind of cons to remote, which therefore are pros for working in office. Yeah, what do you think about working in office? Do you have any?
Yeah, I definitely see the upside of working in office. I said at the beginning of the episode that in my ideal world, I will have an office that we can get together in. But it would definitely be a hybrid model, like we said that we would get into, because I definitely see the pros of, especially when it's a creative job, but even when it isn't as well, of, on the moment being able to bounce ideas back off of one another and being able to just say, oh, this has just come in, and be able to just communicate it rather than be having to text and maybe arrange a video call and now one of you's out and then the other one, and it can be I think so much more fluid in person, but and
also more fun. I feel a lot of the time.
Absolutely, because I think a big downside to working remote is that word that we couldn't think of last time is discipline. I think some people can do it just fine. For me, it's definitely also because I've got a dedicated space. So it's, it makes it all that much easier to be like, now I'm working, now I'm not, now I'm relaxing. But I feel like that can be really hard, especially if you have kids or whatever, to not have your space. I think we might have mentioned this in the last time we recorded this episode about how some people need to study at a library to be able to, you know, they have to
I'm
go
one of
out
those people.
their house. I can't. I get distracted. I'm like, you know, watching people come in now. I really struggle. But, you know, it's having that dedicated place to go to, because some people feel like they can't study at home. So I completely get that, of like having a space to go to. And it's almost like everyone can work out at home, but do you know? Because it's harder to get into like the right mindset.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're like putting your gym clothes on, going to the gym, you're there, you feel the energy, and you just kind of get on with it. So I feel like it's the same for work. So I think it depends so much on the person. So I would, in my ideal little fantasy world, would have an office space where I would probably be, it would kind of turn into, instead of my office at home, it would be my, you know, my office.
Your space,
real office. So I would obviously create it near my home, and then my employees can come in whenever they want. We would obviously have days where it's like, this day we'll definitely have an in-person meeting, whatever, you know, this day for this reason we all need to come in to plan whatever. But in general, it would be up to people, and they can decide if they feel like it, if they're feeling, you know, like sometimes you wake up and period pains or sore head, but it's not enough to call in sick, but you don't want to go to the office, but you got to, but you know, so if you feel like that and you can just work from home and take a bit more of a chill day, but you're still working, then stay at home. But if you can come into the office, you've got the space to come in. So I think that would be my ideal way of doing it.
Yeah, I mean, let's jump into setting up our dynamics. So now we can come to a conclusion that we both agree. So I think to make it fair and to make it be able to work for everybody, I think let's keep it as flexible as possible, but also have a certain structure, or at least a way. So in my opinion, for example, in office, out office, I think we should at least have one day of the week where everybody's in office to allow for this team building per se, and bonding, and then leave it to the people maybe one day or maybe 2 days even of the week where we expect people to be at the office. And that's when we could do, for example, a meeting, a team meeting, if we want to do that weekly. Yeah, exactly. Anything. And then the rest of the week, it be available for people to come in, but not mandatory, if that works for you.
That works for me.
And then same for timetables.
There's also a big thing with if you have an office space, it's obviously going to be designed from whatever, if you'll have the company's logo, something up. So I feel like that also just is like, I don't know, I feel like it gives people a sense of like belonging. This is who I work for. Exactly. Belonging. That's a good way to put it. So I feel like that's also a plus side of like, you know, this is what I'm part of kind of feeling.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a big part of it. It's a big part of it, of having your team members, you know, feel part of a project, feel part of a structure. And that's obviously going to motivate people more than, I just have these tasks to do to work on somebody else's, you know, under somebody else's completely ideal. Agree. Yeah. So yeah, and then the same for timetables. I think giving flexibility is great. I think we should have a way for people to be able to log. I mean, then it comes down to, do you work people for hours? Do you work people for time? Or do you work people for results? So that's a really difficult one. And again, I think it would just have to come down to what kind of work it is. Because, there are some things where it doesn't matter if we were to tell a client, we've been working on this for 40 hours. If they haven't seen anything, then it's kind of pointless. Whereas I have other contracts that literally say time to be spent on this a month is this. So that is hours. And we do have to keep a log to show the clients of, you know, so I think it depends on the activity so much. I do think that working hours is maybe the best way to avoid overworking. I think is a big thing. And also underworking. Like, should you really have to spend more than 8 hours a day? Like, I don't know. Once you have a structure up and running and you have a team, you need to make sure that there's balance in the time that people are spending. But then again, if somebody takes 3 hours to do something that somebody else can do in an hour, then should they both be working the same hours? It's a really difficult subject.
Yeah. I think whenever possible, it's definitely better to go do it with tasks rather than with, even if it's weekly tasks. So it's like, it's not like every day you've got to do this, and this. It's, you know, this week, this needs to get done, and people can work towards it. And if, they want to put more, sometimes it isn't that simple. And I don't know, it's tasks that are maybe a bit more abstract. But I think that's the best way to kind of have that, like you say, kind of, if someone takes 3 hours and they take 3 hours, if someone else takes an hour, then they take an hour. Because at the end of the day, it's very difficult. But at the end of the day, everyone's business works with results. You know, it doesn't matter if you've got 40 people working 40-hour weeks, but getting nothing done because they're just sat there typing nonsense. Or if you have 2 people working 20 hours, but getting the results. At the end of the day, that's what's important. You know, if not, any business is not going to work. And so I feel like that is how it, you know, should be. But
I agree. I think good, brilliant management are people that are able to set tasks and be very good at guessing how long it's going to take and how long it should take. And if it's taking longer, then it's because we've encountered a problem, and that's something to work on. And we're actually going to talk about daily/weekly check-ins after this, but we'll get into that because I think it's part of that. It's if you have strong management that are good at setting goals, at knowing how much work they can ask of people, then it's definitely a better way to measure things than working hours, because it's easy enough to work air quote for an hour and not actually get anything done.
Absolutely.
Daydream or check
just
your Instagram, you know?
Check, exactly. I was literally going to say, like, just check, you know, your own personal stuff, whatever that may be, that you're in that moment more interested in. And I mean, we're human. It's fine. But and I also think
your podcast episode.
I think it also comes down to, I know that you're reading, I don't know how you're getting on with it, but you're reading the
Still reading
book. And there they talk a lot about the different kinds of people that there's, you'll have the numbers more right, but it was like 30% are morning people, 30% are what we would call night owls, and 40% can kind of go in between. So that's crazy that like where society is set up for that 30% that is morning people. So, and also I feel like from a client's point of view, if you can contact a business from 8 a.m. till 8 p.m, that's much better than it being, 9 to 5. But you can't expect people to be working 12-hour shifts. So if you can have a kind of rotation where everyone's in the office or working in the middle part of the day, but some people are coming in earlier and leaving earlier, and some people are coming in later and leaving later, I think that's only going to be beneficial for the company, because people are choosing when they feel most productive. And then obviously for the client's point of view, there's going to be more times when they can contact people rather than everyone being there at the same time. Yeah,
it's super interesting. And I do think that a hybrid model is always the way to go, especially if you do have this management that's able to coordinate and make sure it's fair. There's actually something that I read up on when I was prepping for this episode that was news to me, but I guess it makes sense, is that when you have these hybrid models, be that in office, out office, or timetables, you can encounter something called proximity bias, which basically it means that in these kinds of models, you can have a manager maybe get closer to some of their employees, be that because they're more often at the office or because they work the same timetables as the manager, and then maybe they could come up against, but could be offered more opportunities simply because they are more in line with what the manager's doing. And maybe so you've got to watch out that if you as a manager implement a hybrid model, you need to make sure that it still remains fair for everybody. So in one way, I think forcing people to be in between a certain time or in office at least one day a week also makes it more fair to those people. So it may seem a bit more constricting, but it maybe avoids or lessens the possibility of a proximity bias to come up.
Yeah, that's really
interesting, right?
Very interesting. Yeah, totally makes sense. Totally makes sense. Like you can totally see how that would happen, and it's just normal that it would. But yeah, you don't like think about it.
Yeah. So everything has its pros and its cons. I do think it does come a lot down to what the company does, like you say.
And size of the team as well. If you have a smaller company of like under 10 employees versus, you know, a company that's 50 plus, obviously it becomes a whole other ballpark. But yeah, it's very, very interesting.
Cool. Well, I think we've set up our workplace dynamics for our team. We're going to go with hybrid models with certain constraints, make sure people are getting to know each other, can bounce ideas off each other, but also live their life as they need to and be as efficient as possible for our goals.
Yeah. We need to do a whole separate episode on like workplace like events. Like
Ooh.
Christmas parties and that kind of stuff.
Team building.
Yeah, team. Yeah. Like we have. I was gonna like try and bring it in now, but I feel like.
Oh yeah, I've got so much more to talk about.
Yeah, it's a whole other thing.
Yeah, we should take note of that for a future episode. Let us know if that's something you'd like us to talk about. Office parties, getting to know your colleagues outside of the work environment. It's like going on a field trip when you're a kid.
Yeah, and even just like workplace, like relationships, like all that kind of
juicy,
stuff. How that all plays into
stuff.
It. Yeah, we should definitely do one about that.
Look forward to that. Let us know if you want to hear about that. So we were mentioned before the topic of daily/weekly check-ins and stand-ups. So in both of the work experiences I've had in the past, we've had these. My last company that I worked for, it was daily stand-ups because we were a remote team. So they called the daily stand-up. So at 10 a.m. every day, all of the team members would log on because we were also in kind of different time zones. But we managed to, I can't remember what time the daily stand-up was. It was maybe later in the day for that purpose. And then everybody would talk about what they're working on at that time. So that would be, they would do it in teams. So you'd have the legal team present what they were working on, the scientific team present what they were working on, design team, et cetera. And then you'd have the management give kind of an overview of what's going on at the company. And then in the company that I'm in now, we have weekly meetings where we do kind of the same thing. It's person per person because we're only 8 people. Or even less, actually, when in these meetings. Whereas the other one was about 50, I think we were. So this is a really interesting subject. I find this, these check-ins, these stand-ups, a bit contradictory, a bit. I think it's a really interesting topic to talk about.
Yeah.
Do you do something like this? Do you have maybe daily check-ins or?
Well, we have a Milanote, something that we've talked about many a time on this podcast because we both love it. A collaboration like tool, and our to-do lists are weekly. So we each have a weekly to-do list of tasks that we have to do. They're in the same place, mine and my employees. So I see them when I go in. I see how she's getting on throughout the week, if she's, ticked off half or not or whatever. And I see that when I go to check my to-do list. It's something that, like I say, with her, it's very, I also see it happen because I will see what she's done for our client come up on social media. So it's like, oh, that's been posted, so I kind of see it happening anyway. It's maybe not every week, definitely every 2 weeks, and definitely once a month. Once a month, we have a big meeting where we talk about, how it's gone, how it needs to go, etc. But there, I think more than what did you do? What did I do? It's more like, is this client happy? Do we have to tweak anything in their contract? How are we feeling about working with them? Do we maybe feel like we need to scale up because they're asking more of us or whatever? Or, maybe we now have more clients, and with that one, it feels like we could go down to a smaller plan. And it's kind of, it's more kind of that to kind of check in how all the projects are getting on in regards to how the clients are feeling about it, more than what we've done, because we kind of know that we've done what we had to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Because you already have a system in place that works really well to track per se, or to just to know that things are happening and that things are on track.
Yeah. And it's also, I'm definitely one of those one of those people that loves knowing what I've got to do. I love having a to-do list, because if not, sometimes you come in and you're thinking about the projects already. Sometimes you come in and you haven't been thinking about the projects for the last day because of whatever reason, especially, or if it's like a Monday or whatever. And being able to be like, okay, what am I doing today? For me, it's just like so much less stress, so much, it's more like I get more done. It's more productive. Just come in, sit down. I need to do this, and this today, or this week, or whatever. So I like a to-do list, and I like with my employee to have it all set out. She normally makes her own. What normally happens is when we get a new client, I will write out, so this client, I will extract her to-do list from that new client, from this new contract we just signed, means that we have to do this, and this. From that, this is mine, this is yours, kind of thing. And I will add it in. And then from that, she kind of goes on and does it weekly after that, And it just, I think it gives me peace of mind that I've been really clear on, like, this is what I need from you, to her. That I'm like, these are the things that we've agreed. And if there's anything, we also have a general to-do list. So if there's anything that I feel like I can't manage, or anything that she feels she can't manage, we'll put it there, so that it's whoever has time or energy or whatever, the other person can do it. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think for me, it comes from a peace of mind kind of place. But I understand that for some people, it might be like kind of a stress to have that to-do list staring at you.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I think about these kind of check-in meetings, the idea behind it is obviously great. It's to have your all of your team members talk about what they're working on, so that everybody knows what's going on. You're able to check in and make sure they do have plans for the week. Yeah. Exactly. So I think the idea behind it is great. I think in practice, it can be very counterproductive. A lot of the time, they are very lengthy meetings that maybe you talk about lots of things that not necessarily everybody's concerned. That happens a lot with my current company. Somebody will say, oh yeah, and I need to know this, and then the person concerned will answer the question, and then they'll get into a discussion about it, and it turns into a meeting. Sat there like, yeah, exactly.
Am I supposed to be eating popcorn?
Yeah, exactly. So that's something that can happen a lot. So it becomes a very unproductive meeting, and also I think it can become very kind of scripted. If you're expected to log on to your daily stand-up and give a presentation about what you have planned for that day, you can quite easily, if that's your intention, if that's all that's expected from you, you can quite easily make something very little sound very big. Especially when you're talking to people that don't necessarily know a lot about what you're working on.
Yeah.
I know that as part of the scientific team in my last company, you could easily enough say, and I have to read 3 papers today. Those 3 papers could be 1 page or 50 pages, and they would be,
Yeah, so okay.
So I think it can be not very productive and not very efficient. So it's an interesting subject. And also people can feel kind of micromanaged. If it is a daily check-in, what are you doing? What are you working on?
And it can feel like it depends on what it is and how it's, how it's kind of like you're saying. So like there, for example, in your one previous job, it was like one person from each kind of area would say, this is what we're working on as a team. I feel like if it's done in a more one-on-one, it could almost turn like competitive, like
absolutely.
I've seen,
especially in a sales perspective.
Well, yeah, that's I love Selling Sunset. I'm all about selling real estate in Los Angeles. And they have that. They have meetings and they're like, okay, so who sold what this week? And then it's like, so someone will be like, oh, I've sold a $10 million villa in the Hollywood Hills, and I've got another client signed up, ready to go for next week that we're going to sign the papers for 15 million. And someone else is like, I haven't done anything. And they're like, why haven't you done anything? And it can be very catty and showy offy, and I don't know. And I understand that for the people who own the brokerage, it's important to know what agents are producing and which ones aren't, and which ones are getting results and which ones are, getting money for them and which ones aren't. But is like a group team meeting? But then sometimes in those team meetings, things happen of like what you're saying of like one of them will say, well, I'm looking for a buyer for this kind of house, and someone else say, oh, I've got a buyer for that kind of house. And then, you know, so like sometimes, but then I feel like that communication can be done in a different way of like, I don't know, have something where you can be like, this is what I need from other people, or this is what I'm working on, if anybody has any insight, whatever. And it doesn't have to be this like weekly kind of who's done most.
Absolutely. I mean, I think in a way it can be very productive. I think if it's set up properly, it can be very constructive.
Like everything.
It's what I tried to have a little think about, okay, what about it really makes sense, and how can that setup be used as most efficiently as possible. And I think it's important to not ask people to give me a list of the things you did last week and the things you're doing this week. I don't think that's necessarily very interesting, especially if you are a strong manager and you've set the goals and you're not worried about people getting stuff done, because you can always say things that you're going to do and then not necessarily do them. That's easy enough to do. But I think, like you say, if you come at it at what problems are you facing right now on what you're working on, or what wins did you get this week, or something like that, you know, something a lot more.
Or is there anything you need from the rest of the team?
Exactly.
Or, you know, those kind of questions. So it's just like a way to have a check-in, but not just on how many things did you tick off your to-do list or whatever. It's like a check-in in a more of a like team way. And
to be able to answer those questions, then you'll have to have got stuff done, you know? It's a good way to check in without people feeling just, it's just a list of my to-do list. Doesn't make any sense. And I know that for certain people, this kind of meeting can be very constructive, because lots of people maybe do need that little nudge. Okay, what did you get done this week? Or what are you planning for this week? For them to do that mental prep. But if you outline it in a way of what are the issues you're facing, if you haven't done anything, you're not facing any issues. So it's also it also works for those kinds of people that maybe do need that little nudge, and you do need to check in if they have plans for the week.
And in a previous episode, we talked about the like statistics of like how many people thought that like a huge percentage of the meetings that they were doing were like unnecessary and boring.
Spoiler.
Or something like that. Oh, was that from this one? Oh, cut. I thought that was from the management one. Whoops, never mind.
That's fine. It's a good segue though, because that's what we're doing next.
Brilliant.
So I think we're going to leave this in. So what I thought we could do next, I have a little game, right? So I have some stats, I have some statistics of studies that have been done on these subjects. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some sentences, and you're going to say true or false, depending on what you think. And then I'll give you the answer and obviously give you the source. I'm not just making these up.
You promise.
I promise. And I'll give you the source. So the first one is employees working from home demonstrated a 10% decrease in productivity compared to their in-office counterparts.
I want to say false, but I feel like it may be true. False.
You're right. It's false.
Yeah.
So the statistic is, a study was led by Stanford, and they compared the productivity in people that work, the same people working from home and at the office, and they demonstrated a 13% increase in productivity. So it's a bit of a myth buster on if you're at home, then you're less likely to get work done because maybe you're distracted, or maybe you just sit on your sofa, do nothing because nobody can see you anyway. They actually demonstrated that that wasn't the case, at least in this study. So that's interesting. Maybe if I give, it was published in the Quarterly Journal of Economics in 2015. So that was a Stanford run by Stanford.
All that kind of stuff we can also leave in the show notes. If anybody wants to check out links and all that kind of stuff, you can always leave all that.
If you're interested in reading up on it, because I think it would be really interesting to see how they did this study.
Yeah, definitely.
Did they take the same people and put them in different situations? Did they compare? Is it an average? That's something that we could look into a bit more closely.
Also, how long did you give people to like, you know,
prove
get used to doing one or the other? Yeah. Also, just like if you're used to working in an office always, then how easy is it going to be for you to work at home? And the other way around. If you've always worked at home, how easy is it going to be for you to start working in an office? So yeah, that would be interesting. Yes.
So yeah, second one is over 70% of managers consider their meetings unproductive and inefficient.
True. Well, actually, I don't know. A lot, but I don't know but that if it's 70, but
it is true.
Like, yeah,
it is true. So over
crazy. Blew my mind the first
70%
time. And it still
of
does.
managers consider their meetings unproductive and inefficient, which is crazy.
It is so
Stop doing
crazy.
them.
Stop doing them then. Like it's not even
Change
employees saying it. It's the managers saying it, which just makes it so much funnier.
So yeah, so that was a survey by Harvard Business Review that found that 71% of managers considered their meetings unproductive and inefficient.
Crazy.
Our third one is burnout affects over 70% of employees.
I would like to say false. I feel like it's probably a high percentage, but I hope it's not 70%.
It's true.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Tough. So
Yeah.
that was research run by Gallup in 2018 in a study called Employee Burnout.
Wow.
So yeah, 76% of employees experience burnout at least sometimes in their current job.
Great.
And sad. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
you only live once, guys.
Exactly. And this is something
It's
that
such a big
we've
part of
probably
life.
already mentioned. We are definitely doing an episode all about this, about burnout.
We're going to go
and
into a whole season of
mental
work-life
health.
balance
Mm-hmm.
and what that's all about, because that's
Yeah.
something that we hold close to our hearts.
Yeah.
Something that we speak about a lot personally,
A
the
lot.
two of us.
Yes. That's what most of our work-related calls are about.
I can't do it anymore. You don't have to. It's your job, not your life.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, that is so sad that it's such a high percentage though.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how, as mental health does become more and more of a kind of just well-known, talked about topic, I wonder how much this percentage will change or stay the same, if it's something that, if companies are taking it more seriously and putting measures in place so that their employees don't get to the stage of burnout or not, or if it's still going to be a while. It's
a really good question. I think it'll probably change a lot quicker in some sectors and a lot slower or not at all in others, unfortunately. But it's it is getting more and more known and more talking about and talked about. And that's also what our mission is, to get these subjects being talked about and, get everybody's input and opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
So we have two last ones. We'll do two quick ones. So a positive emotional climate, so positive team, can lead to a 20% improvement in performance.
I'm hoping that's true. Yeah, it would be nice if it was higher, but I'm going to say true.
It is true.
Yay.
A positive emotional climate, so positive vibes at the office basically, has proven to show up to 20% improvement. So a team can be 20% more efficient if they're feeling a better vibe at the office. And that was something that was looked into in a big study called the Ripple Effect by, I had her name here. It's just the initials. I'm afraid I don't know her name. But it was done in 2002 and it's called the Ripple Effect. And I think it's something really interesting. I actually have the link to the document, so we can link that in our notes.
It's the kind of thing that I feel like it can be hard for when I was doing prep for my next episode. There's a lot of things that's like, especially when you get into like freelancers and stuff like that, all those kind of statistics, it's hard. It'll be like, we know it's around a third, but we don't. It's the kind of things that are like hard to like do actual proper
Big studies
tests
on.
Yeah.
Which is what we need. We need to show these stats for people to change their ways.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole other topic. I did originally want to go into it in detail, but I think it's quite a long one, and we've already talked for quite a while. But
yeah,
the environment at the office, I think, is so important and to be taken into account in efficiency and in how people can work, which is also a good thing about working away from the office, being able to go home and be in your own space, is that if that's where you're more comfortable.
Yeah, I feel like it's definitely the kind of thing that depends on the person. I know some people who it really affects and some people who just, like my sister, she works in cabin crew, and the things that like people say to her, and it just like washes right off of her. And I'm like, I don't know how she just like shrugs her shoulder and moves on. And just, I feel like if she worked in an office, it wouldn't be something that would affect her, if I were to work in an office, it would definitely affect me. So I think that's probably why it is like up to 20%, because with some people it probably doesn't make a difference.
Yeah.
With how some offices are set up, it might not really make a difference. There's so much that does go into play, but I feel like having a good environment overall is always going to be beneficial. Even if it's someone that feels it more or less, I feel like, you know, it being a place that people want to go to and feel comfortable in is always going to be a plus.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm one of those people that it affects really quite a lot. I'm a very empathetic person, which is great in some ways. I'm very good at, you know, talking to different types of people. I'm pretty good at managing, and empathy. I mean, it can work against me a lot at the office. Even if somebody's just having a frustrating day, they haven't made the sales they wanted to make. I can feel that, and it really puts me off and distracts me. Doesn't make me want to work. Yeah, I'm one of those people that it makes a big difference in office environment. Unfortunately, but also fortunately, because it has other pluses.
Definitely.
And then our last one is around 10% of employees would choose a job with flexible work options over one that paid more but offered no flexibility.
Ooh.
10%.
Ooh, I feel like people are so money driven though. I'm going to say false.
It's false, but because it's around 80%. Around 80% of people would choose a job with flexible work options over one that pays more. Oh, so that was a study done in 2019, relatively recently, just before COVID.
Just before COVID. So I wonder what it would be like now. Yeah. Interesting.
By Flex Jobs. So it was called a workplace survey done in 2019 by Flex Jobs. So yeah, cool. it really demonstrates how strongly some workers value that autonomy. Or most workers. Even.
Most workers, yeah. Crazy. I mean, not crazy. For me, that's normal, but I am surprised that that's kind of the general, and there's such a high percentage.
So it bears well for the structure that we've decided to set up with our hybrid.
Perfect. We'll be so successful.
We will. All of our employees are going to be so efficient.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, going into these statistics and really proving that the discussion we've had today and on these different, you know, the pros to this hybrid kind of working world that we're more and more leaning towards, luckily. It's becoming more and more the norm. But the last topic I really wanted to talk about was, what do you do if you're in a situation where your company does have these strict, maybe 9 to 5, full in office, and you'd like to talk to your manager about it and maybe suggest some changes? And is that something that you can do? How do you do it? So I'd like to hear your take on that.
I think
as a manager.
Yeah, I feel like with everything we've been talking about, it all depends. I feel like if it's a smaller company, you might be able to have more room to be able to talk to the manager. I feel like in a bigger company, if your manager has a manager who has a manager who has a manager, it could be more complicated. But if it's a smaller company, and also, so when at the beginning when you were saying about if you need to work from home or whatever, every now and again, it's fine. And I was thinking, it's also because you have worked there for what, 3-4 years now? Yeah. So they know that you're not just saying it because you don't want to work that day and you're just kind of taking a paid day off. That's not what's happening. So I feel like you can't get somewhere and 6 months in be like, I want to change your entire, structure. I feel like maybe a way to go about it would be to talk about it in an informed way. So maybe, you do have these statistics that we've been talking about. You do have something to back up what you're saying. You're not just saying, because I feel like for someone who doesn't have that in mind and they've got a very strict kind of traditional structure, it can just come off like you're being lazy or that you don't want to work, or, all these kind of things that are associated with these things that we're talking about. So maybe if you did also, without it feeling like you're trying to rally up against management or anything, but maybe talk to other people about it, see how they would do, how they feel about it, and maybe kind of, again, without it feeling like you're ganging up on your manager, just have an open conversation about it. And like, would you be open to maybe we have one day when we can work from home? Or I don't know. It's such a hard question.
Yeah, it's really interesting. There's a concept called managing up, which is basically you yourself being able to influence your manager. And in my view of things, like you say, getting out stats and everything, that's basically a way to talk in terms of benefit for the company.
Exactly.
So if rather than coming at it like I would work better if I were to be able to come in from 7 a.m. because I work better in the morning and be able to leave a little bit earlier because I'm less productive in the afternoon. If you're able to put that in terms of how it's going to benefit the company, and if you can back that up with stats, with studies, with conversations you've had with colleagues, a manager is most likely going to be open to at least consider it, or at least have the conversation with you. And as a manager yourself, I think it's worth saying that no matter how senior a manager is, no matter how long they've been in their role, which isn't necessarily very long. Some managers are employed as a manager, so maybe they've only been in the role for a couple months. Usually if you talk in terms of what's interesting for them, reaching the company's goals or reaching that particular manager's goals for that part of the company, and you're able to present it as this would be better for you.
Yeah.
I think most managers are always open to having a conversation.
Yeah. And present also, like, to piggyback off of that, kind of solutions rather than just kind of not problems, but like things you want to change. You know, if you were to say, for example, I would like to come in earlier because I feel like it'd be more productive and I feel like it would benefit the company in this way and that way and whatever. And this other person would work better if they were to come in on a later shift, and, you know, and kind of, so it's like, so you're trying to come up with solutions on how there's not going to be a like dead hour where there's nobody like covering you or whatever, and kind of present it as a ready-made solution. I think that's also a good way to go about it.
It's a big, I think, communication in general. We're going to do a whole episode actually about the magic of communication and how to get messages across in a way that you're more likely to get your way per se. But like you say, I think it's really important to always be constructive about these kinds of conversations. So like you say, rather than necessarily presenting a problem, you can always get to that. But what's really important is that you present here's how I think we could work that would be better for this and that reason. And if you give a solution like this, people feel less attacked. Like,
exactly
this is
what I was going to say.
What doesn't work about what you're doing. If you do it more like, this is what I think could work better. What do you think? Then it's more likely to be a more civilized conversation.
Absolutely.
And collaborative conversation. So managing up is a thing. And I think anybody,
I was actually listening to podcast the other day where they were talking about a company, and I can't think, but like quite a well-known company that work like that, and it works really well for them. And it's almost like they always say that the client's right. I think it was something like Harrods. It wasn't Harrods, but I can't. And they were saying about how, you know, the client's always right, obviously, but in this case, it really was, and that they like that it was a total like managing up, and like the people who worked in the shop like had not more
of a say.
Yeah, more of a say, I guess, than normal in regards to management. And it was very interesting, and they were talking about it and how successful they are. And I thought I'd never heard of it, managing up. And very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we actually got a couple of listener questions on this topic. And we've actually covered, I think, most of them with our discussion. So the first one was, how can I suggest flexible hours to a manager who prefers strict 9 to 5? So remain constructive, talk in terms of how it's beneficial for the company, and back yourself up with some numbers and some studies that have been done.
And what you said about it not coming off like you're attacking them, I think is such a good point. Like, it's a conversation, not a attack on how they're doing things and how they're managing.
Yeah. Another one is, our daily check-ins feel like micromanaging. I think this is probably the case for lots of people. How do I raise this concern respectfully? Oof. Again. Don't use the word micromanagement. Managers hate that.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess, again, just having a conversation about it, and maybe trying, rather than getting rid of them, like we were saying before, maybe change how they're done and like the focus of them. Try and take it towards that rather than just saying, I don't think we should do these, because I feel like you're micromanaging us. Be like, what about...
That's not going to go down well.
No, it's not going to go down well. No one's going to come out well from that conversation. Yeah, maybe like, how about we start implementing these kind of questions in the daily stand-ups or whatever.
Yeah. So remain constructive, come with solutions, solution-oriented, benefits for the company. And our last question is somebody that asked, I'm remote, but I worry about missing out on office FaceTime. Any tips? That's a tough one. Imagine if you are remote, because you have to be, because you're in a different country. For example, or far away enough for it to be hard to get to the office.
Yeah.
But you worry about not having this in-office time, either because you're not meeting people, or you're struggling to get to know your colleagues, or you're worried about this bias. What was it? Proximity bias.
Yeah.
So maybe you think that your colleagues that are in office are getting more opportunity. What would you recommend in that situation?
It's hard. Because obviously, if we're taking it in a really extreme case where you can't go to the office, you can't see these people for whatever reason. In an ideal world, the first thing that came to mind was like, try to maybe establish relationships with them that aren't just work orientated. So like, if you do try and do like... But again, like, not being in person is so tricky. Like, if you were to say to one of your coworkers, oh, do you want to have a chat after work finishes, it might come off a bit like you're coming onto them or something. So
yeah, that's true. Maybe a good way to do that is when you do have meetings with your colleagues, start off with a bit of small talk. Ask them how their weekend was. Ask them what they're doing, what their plans are, if they have the plans over the next holiday period.
Yeah. Also, to just take it always back to communication, I feel like if it is something that you're maybe worried about, I feel like talking about it, at least with your manager, I feel like if you were to just come out and say, I'm feeling a bit like this, is there anything I can do? Is there anything that could maybe help me not feel this way? If there's anything you recommend, anything like that, I feel like if they are aware of it as well, then it might help.
That's really good. That's really good advice, I think. Bring it up. Talk to your manager about it. Talk to your teammates about it. Who knows? Maybe they'll organize a company trip to the Maldives.
Yeah, exactly.
Worst case scenario, nothing changes.
Exactly. Like, talking about it is never... They're not going to be like, oh, get over yourself. And even if they are, then then that's that, At least you've tried. And I think open communication is always the way to go.
What a nice note to end this episode on.
Yes.
Communication is always the way to go.
Yeah.
So yeah, super interesting. Thank you for your insight. I enjoyed that.
Yeah. Thank you for a very interesting episode. Very interesting. I think you did a very good job of trying to make us play devil's advocate with each other.
Yeah. I mean, we'll add some clips in of our last episode, maybe, especially our blonde moments,
brain farts and that. Yeah.
But I'm glad we redid it. We were a bit worried about not showing both sides of the story. We really want to have as many points of view as possible. Yeah. We're new to this as well, and new to the working world as well. Yeah. So it'd be great to have other people's feedback. If you don't agree with us, we would love to hear that.
We would love it. We would love to hear stories or experiences or anything. And we do also plan to have guests on the podcast for this same reason, to talk about things like this from different perspectives and different expertise as well. So please let us know.
Yeah, we're actually should I say this? We're actually thinking of doing some maybe extra feature episodes of, 10, 15 minutes about one of the topics we've already discussed, with some new ideas or things that we've come up against in our working world. Yeah.
Or the feedback from you guys,
as
well. If we've had any people writing in with anything, whether it be, especially if it's disagreeing with us, to talk about that and just, kind of revisit things, because it's ever evolving. We're ever evolving. And obviously everything is. And revisiting things, I think, is very interesting.
So thank you for listening.
Yeah.
If you do have any things to tell us, any contradictions contradict us a little bit. Tell us where we're wrong.
We
jump on our socials.
Yeah.
You can find us everywhere. We will manage. We will manage podcast depending on the platform.
And yeah, see you there.